Welcome to the Explainer. When we picture ancient Buddhism, our minds usually drift straight to those stunning, ethereal Pure Land visuals. We imagine perfect tranquility, floating lotus flowers, and just days of uninterrupted meditation. But looking at the source material today, we stumbled upon a document that paints a radically different picture. It's called the Sarvastivada Vinaya. And let me tell you, instead of lofty spiritual philosophy, this text is a surprisingly gritty, incredibly practical, and honestly sometimes hilarious rulebook. It is the ancient survival guide that governed the day-to-day mud, blood, and reality of monastic life. To make sense of this massive ancient text, we've organized it into 5 highly digestible themes: monastic daily survival challenges, interacting with the secular world, mediating internal disputes, facing nature and the supernatural, and finally, the Buddha's pragmatic management. Okay, let's dive into Section 1, Monastic Daily Survival Challenges, or the gritty reality of ancient monkhood. Right off the bat, we have to shatter that illusion of perfect, peaceful meditation. These were real humans living in a sweltering, dangerous environment long before modern medicine. Surviving day-to-day was a massive operational challenge. Just take a look at these approved monastic items. The Buddha explicitly had to evaluate and approve these rather bizarre but highly necessary personal care and medical tools just to keep his monks functional. You've got shaving razors, nail clippers, and yes, even nose hair tweezers for basic hygiene. But then you hit the harsher realities. The Buddha actually had to legally mandate the construction of special beds with holes cut into them, placing vessels underneath, specifically for monks suffering from severe diarrhea and dysentery. And he had to grant special medical exemptions for eating haratiki fruit to cure what the text calls wind illness. It's incredibly grounding to realize these were the pressing, everyday issues they faced.
Now, what's really interesting about this next rule is how the Buddha had to perfectly balance practical protection with strict rules against luxury. Walking barefoot in the ancient world meant getting your feet torn to shreds by thorns or infected by mud. So he absolutely allowed footwear made from certain materials like elephant or horse skin, and even specialized snow boots for monks traveling through freezing regions. But to prevent the monks from looking like wealthy aristocrats, he completely outlawed luxury pelts. Lion, tiger, leopard, otter, and cat skins were strictly forbidden. It was all about pure utility, zero fashion.
And it wasn't just illness or the elements, the environment itself was actively trying to kill them. Monks meditating out in the wilderness at night were sitting ducks for wild animals. The text actually records monks being terrified of lions, tigers, and bears just while walking to their rooms in the dark. So the Buddha mandated exact architectural steps for monastery defense. Step 1, build walls on all 4 sides. Step 2, erect fences or heavy wooden palisades. Step 3, dig a deep moat or trench around the entire perimeter. These monasteries essentially had to be built like fortified bunkers. Moving on to Section 2, interacting with the secular, which was really all about PR and politics. Because surviving the wild was only half the battle. They relied entirely on the surrounding community for their food. Which brings us to a massive public relations disaster. Imagine this scenario. A local farmer loses his pig. He's furious. Meanwhile, a group of monks innocently stumble upon some abandoned pig intestines lying by the monastery moat. Not wanting to waste food, they decide to cook them up. Well, the farmer follows the smoke, sees the monks boiling pig parts, and hauls them straight into the local secular court, accusing these holy men of being pig thieves. It's a hilarious misunderstanding, but an incredibly damaging situation for the monastery's reputation. The secular judge actually believed the monks, knowing they wouldn't kill an animal. But the gossip was already out there, the damage was done. So the Buddha had to step in with an official binding ruling. From now on, pig intestines in the open must not be taken. He framed it as a minor offense, a dukkharata. And we see the Buddha acting purely as a pragmatic leader here. He's resolving a bizarre community dispute not out of some grand theological necessity, but simply to protect the Sangha's reputation from local townsfolk. And this brilliantly illustrates his approach to managing wealthy patrons, too. There was an incredibly wealthy man, the Ugra elder, who tried to donate these extravagant bowls made of solid gold, silver, glass, and crystal to the monks. The Buddha explicitly rejected them. He enforced a strict anti-corruption and anti-luxury policy by ruling that monks could only use simple iron or clay bowls. Accepting gold bowls would have utterly destroyed their image as humble ascetics in the eyes of the public.
Let's jump into Section 3, Mediating Internal Disputes, or as I like to call it, the ancient HR department.
When you're managing hundreds of people from totally different backgrounds, all living together in close quarters, you inevitably need a robust human resources department. And to understand ancient monastic HR, you have to meet the ultimate troublemakers, the 6 group monks. If you read through the Vinaya, these guys are the recurring antagonists. They were a specific, notorious faction of monks who constantly tested the boundaries, agitated the community, and just acted terribly. They are literally the reason a massive portion of the weirdest rules in this text had to be written down in the first place.
I mean, just look at the absolute chaos these specific monks caused. They strutted around wearing royal shell jewelry on their pants, completely mocking their vows of poverty. They disrespected the almsgiving process by literally accepting food with their feet. At one point, they even kept pet dogs and then proudly displayed dog-chewed bones inside their sacred alms bowls just to disgust the wealthy patrons who were serving them. The Buddha was forced to micromanage their behavior down to exactly how they were legally allowed to hold a bowl just to keep them in line. So the crucial point that emerges from all this internal conflict is that individual rights were entirely subservient to the collective harmony and sustainability of the group. Which brings us to a very important number, 0. 0 is the exact amount of personal property a dying monk could legally will to their favorite caregiver. The text clearly states there is no law of inheritance here. The moment a monk died, every single thing they owned instantly reverted back to the collective sangha, to be redistributed. You simply couldn't play favorites. The institution's survival came first.
Let's move to our fourth section, Facing Nature and the Supernatural, where we deal with ghosts, demons, and snakes. It wasn't just HR disputes and PR crises they were dealing with. To them, the ancient world was full of hazards they believed were entirely real: ghosts, demons, and deadly wildlife, all of which required specific legislation. Take the absolutely wild timeline of the Black Ananda incident. Black Ananda was this strongly built monk who decided to scavenge some pristine white cloth wrapping a fresh corpse. Well, according to the text, as he took the cloth, the corpse actually spoke to him and told him not to. Black Ananda ignores it, spits on the corpse, and walks away. Immediately, a screaming, hungry ghost starts chasing him. Ananda runs all the way back to the monastery, where the guarding deities refuse to let the ghost inside, causing the ghost to fall straight into that defensive trench we talked about earlier. Because of this terrifying chaos, the Buddha passed a strict law forbidding monks from ever taking cloth from unrotted corpses. But on the flip side, their respect for the natural world was profound, extending down to the smallest creatures. Monks used dirt and beans as a kind of primitive soap to wash themselves. But this unfortunately attracted insects to their water sources. To ensure monks didn't accidentally consume or kill these bugs, the Buddha actually invented exact procedural steps for water filtration. Step 1, strain the water using a specific device. Step 2, carefully pour the live insects back into the well. Step 3, if the well was getting too crowded, safely transfer the insects to a flowing stream. It's a beautiful, highly detailed process born out of deep compassion. Sometimes, though, nature fought back with tragic consequences. 8 finger widths. That specific, highly precise measurement became the mandatory height for all monastic bed legs. Why? Well, because of a terrible incident where a monk was sitting in his low bed, meditating in the sweltering heat. He nodded off, his head slumped forward, and a venomous snake, thinking the monk was attacking it, struck him right in the forehead and killed him. To protect his monks from this ever happening again, the Buddha immediately legislated that all beds must be raised exactly 8 finger widths off the ground. Which brings us to our fifth and final section, the Buddha's pragmatic management, or the Buddha as the ancient CEO. Throughout this entire text, we see a side of the Buddha functioning as an incredibly efficient, institutional manager. Just look at the complex legal rulings he had to make regarding property rights. We have a case here where a local king taxed a region so heavily that the monks actually fled their monastery to evade the taxes. While it was abandoned, a group of rival naked ascetics moved right into the fully furnished building. 10 years later, the tax is lifted, the monks return, and they demand their monastery back. The dispute got so heated that the king actually had to send men to punch out the ascetics' teeth. The Buddha had to step in, not with a spiritual platitude, but with a highly complex zoning law to figure out how to merge properties and fairly divide the assets of abandoned monasteries. We also see the Buddha making management decisions that heavily reflect the historical realities and gender dynamics of that specific era. Impartially looking at the source text, there's a moment where the Buddha was asked about the recitation of the nuns' precepts. The text states that he mandated the monks to recite these precepts on behalf of the nuns, citing a societal belief of the time that women were prone to forgetting. Regardless of modern perspectives, this shows us directly how the Buddha actively structured the hierarchy and operational protocols of the institution based on the societal norms he was managing at the time. He was also an absolute master of financial distribution. When Lady Malika, a very wealthy patron, unexpectedly dropped a massive sum of money during a ceremony, chaos threatened to break out because the young novices wanted a cut of the cash. The Buddha immediately established a precise mathematical breakdown right there on the spot. Adult monks would receive 3 parts, or 75%, and the novices would receive 1 part, or 25%. He systematically eliminated financial resentment before it could even start. And when that same patron, Lady Malika, asked a very simple question, exactly how many monks and novices are in the monastery, the monks realized they had absolutely no idea. Calling out names just resulted in a jumbled, chaotic mess. The Buddha solved this logistical nightmare by introducing what he called the counting stick method. Every monk and novice would take a small stick, which would then be collected and counted. He essentially invented an ancient error-proof census protocol to track inventory and personnel on the fly. So what does this all mean for us? Well, it leaves us with a final thought for today's explainer. We revere the Buddha for his profound spiritual philosophy, and rightly so. But when you look at the Sarvastivada Vinaya, when you see him regulating dysentery beds, mediating pig theft rumors, surviving snake bites, and inventing census protocols, doesn't it prove that the Buddha was also one of history's greatest pragmatic managers? He didn't just teach people how to escape the world. He mastered the art of managing the messy, chaotic, and beautiful reality of human beings living together within it.